You have to become good at identifying what's draining your bucket. What are the things that if you do them or you say them, it takes everything else you did, and in her mind, it means nothing. It means BS. Tonight, what I'm excited about is we are going to talk about the 3 critical pillars. These are things that people don't talk about when they're working on transforming their marriage. It's like a lot of guys put in a lot of work. Most guys in this group are good men. They really, really care about their marriages. But what I've seen a lot of you doing is you're putting a lot of work unnecessarily into the relationship, into the marriage, because you care. But what's happening is it's actually reversing some of your gains. And we're going to talk about that. And essentially what's happening in a lot of marriages is a lot of guys are skipping the things that really, really matter because they're not aware of it. And I'm going to share that with you tonight. And they're overdoing in things that don't matter. So for example, this is typical, helping around the house, being a good father. Nothing wrong with it. It's not going to help your marriage. But a lot of guys tend to overdo in those areas, or appreciation or dating or flowers. So we're going to explain these 3 critical pillars, what they are, and what to do to implement it in your marriage. Okay, let's get started. So, and again, I just want to be clear. This is for guys who are absolutely sure they're married to the right one. If you are someone who's married, but you're not really sure if you want to stay with your wife, and you're not really sure if she's right for you, the methods we're going to teach you today is actually not going to work for you. Even if it does, it's going to be temporary. It's going to backfire. So I just want to advise a little caution. These are not meant to be used unless you absolutely know that she's the right one for you, because otherwise it'll be manipulation. All right, guys? So let's get into it. And if you relate to what I'm saying, let me know. Number 1 is your leaking bucket. Okay. A lot of guys, most guys have this leaking bucket marriage transformation system, which means they are putting things into this like bucket, their marriage bucket, but there's a hole at the bottom that's draining their efforts. It's draining their investment. It's draining their good intentions. And they're wondering why there's no water left in their bucket. And I call it the leaking bucket strategy. It's like they just fill up the bucket with whatever they could. With dating, I'll buy her flowers, I'll pay for things, I'll give her money, I'll help with the kids, I'll do laundry, I'll do dishes, I'll try to figure out her love language. But they don't understand that there's a hole at the bottom. And the hole, if you don't identify that hole, what's going to happen is your investment is going to actually pour out through that hole. And I'll give you a few examples of what the hole looks like. And there are really hundreds, and it's impossible to make one video that's going to explain every type of leaking bucket, of course. But I'm going to give you some of the basic ones that are pretty easy for you to understand, so you know what I'm talking about. And you can immediately start applying some of these things into your marriage. I'll give you an example. One thing is, for example, addiction. If you have a real compulsive behavior, example, alcohol, pornography, drugs. I'm not talking about you drink a little bit or you watch a little bit of pornography. I'm not judging that. I'm talking about a compulsive need to engage in that type of behavior. That's a leaking bucket. You can go around and look at marriage transformation and try to figure out how to become an amazing husband. And I promise you're wasting your time, because until that core is identified, it is impossible until you fix that addiction. And I'm giving you an extremely obvious one because I'm trying to teach this concept. And the way to teach it is to start with something which is really obvious, okay? So addiction is like, if you don't address it and you make believe it's not there, like I speak to many guys that have porn addiction, and like they don't want to acknowledge that it's a big problem, but they just want a solution for their marriage. And it doesn't matter if your wife doesn't know about your porn addiction. It's still going to sabotage the marriage because it is draining a lot of. I'm not going to get into the rationale. We've done many videos on that in other places. But I'm giving you an example of a leaking bucket. Okay, now that doesn't apply to most of you guys. So let's give another example. Another example is, and again, these are very basic ones, is your in-laws, right? It might be your in-laws, the way you have a relationship with your parents or your in-laws is draining all your best intentions from your marriage. You might love your wife. You might really have unconditional love for her. You might really care about her and want to make her happy. But the way you have your relationship with her parents or her relationship with your parents can easily create a leaking bucket situation that your best intentions keep getting robbed and distorted and disturbed and reversed because of a relationship with, an in-law. Again, this is an example. It doesn't apply to everyone. What I find, which is also very common, another example, and again, there are hundreds of these, is your phone. Well, you can be an amazing husband or think you're an amazing husband, but if you look at your phone or check your phone at a certain time while your wife is in the middle of a conversation with you, that in her mind could reverse everything. And the key over here is, again, it may not be your phone, it may be something else. Again, there are hundreds of these and it's impossible to say all of them. And I keep saying that because I want you to approach this in a mature, healthy way and not just think it's a magical, solution to just guess, okay? Because that's another problem. Problem is guessing. And my point over here is that, you can think in your mind that you're putting a lot into the marriage, but here's the gold, guys. All right, you ready for this? This is really the key. In a woman's mind, there are certain things that matter, and most of the things that you think matter do not matter to her, and she's not even aware of it because it's a feeling. We'll get into that soon. My point is, you have to become good at identifying what's draining your bucket. What are the things that if you do them or you say them, it takes everything else you did, and in her mind, it means nothing. It means BS. And it sounds unfair, and it shouldn't be that way, but that's the reality. And the quicker you understand the leaking bucket idea, that you can have a leak at the bottom of your marriage efforts, and if you don't identify the leak, all your efforts don't matter. Because in her mind, I'll give you an example. It may not apply to you. You looked at your phone at a time that she was talking to you, suddenly it means you don't care. You can be like, what the hell? I care. But in her mind, you don't. I'll give you another example. And this one is very, very common. And it's doing too much. And this is something which is hard for guys to understand. And please, if you're in the comments, tell me if you relate to this. Hello, Marty. Hello, except I don't want to butcher your name. No offense. Some people struggle with my first name also. Have several. I use David because that's the easy one. But if you, a lot of guys do too much in their marriage, and this creates a leaking bucket. And this is really something that so many guys struggle to understand. If you do too much in your marriage, you will create a leaking bucket, which means if you think that by cleaning around the house and helping with the kids and being an amazing father and giving her money as much as she wants and buying her flowers and taking her out on dates and showing her appreciation, if you think that is what's going to transform your marriage into an amazing marriage, that itself, by doing too much, actually, you're reversing the progress. Now, the things I just said are not bad. They're good for an amazing marriage. But if your marriage is struggling and you want to turn it around with that, it's not going to work. Because the reason for that is, in fact, that's the first thing we do. One of the first things we do with our clients is we help them identify exactly what are the things they should stop doing. If you do too much, what you're basically saying is, I'm desperate. And desperation means I'm clueless. And clueless means I have no ability to actually read your unspoken needs. I'm just doing everything because I'm not sure what's going to work. And that is really, what I'm giving you right now is gold. It's freaking gold, because that is where guys go off in their relationships. They go into a place of, I'm going to do everything, whatever she says, whatever she says, I'm going to do. And what she says keeps changing, by the way. You guys relate to it? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, it happens all the time. So the key is to first understand the leaking bucket model. And once you get that straight, then you could get into, okay, David, how the hell do I fill up my bucket? So what should I be putting in my bucket, right? I'm not saying don't do anything in marriage, but you first have to realize that if you have a hole at the bottom, it's going to mess up your efforts. And doing too much creates a hole, because doing too much creates distrust. Doing too much shows you don't know how to hit her feelings, which leads us to the second part. The second pillar of an amazing marriage is you have to become an expert. You must. There's no way you can avoid this. And this is the part that people want to avoid. They want to focus on doing, especially men. They want to do, buy her stuff, pay her stuff, do things around the house. And they don't realize it's not going to help. Do laundry, doing dishes, doing the lawn, mowing the lawn, cleaning the basement. These things don't work. They're not bad. They just don't work to turn around a marriage. So the second thing is you must become an expert in unspoken communication. And this is a critical pillar. You cannot bypass it. And this is the part that men don't want to look at. They prefer to just do things because it's easier. It's more convenient. Let me just check the chat over here. Sean says, David, I've done that. I've tried to show love through what I do, and it didn't work. Exactly, Sean. And I've heard that. I mean, how do we know this? We have thousands of guys we have in the group. I've worked with hundreds of guys in the past. I've observed thousands of marriages, and it's always the same thing. It's nothing wrong with buying her flowers. But if you think by buying her flowers and by cleaning the house and by doing the dishes, you're going to recapture her heart, it's sad because you're wasting your time. So I don't know where you're up to in your marriage transformation, Sean, but that's absolutely, I mean, that has been the experience, the collective experience of everybody I know. So what do you have to do? You have to become, and here's the key. Here's the part where you impress your wife. Here's where you shock her. Here's where you show her that whoever she thinks you are, you're different in a good way. You have to become an expert in unspoken communication. Why? Because what a woman wants, she wants to feel certain things. She wants to feel something. Thousands of different types of feelings, and it's impossible to elaborate on all of them. But she wants to feel something. So when she is telling you to do something, it's not even about the action. She wants to create let's say she wants you to pick up your laundry. Let's say. She thinks she's going to feel a certain feeling if you pick it up. And here's the key. You cannot hit feelings by doing things. And this is the disconnect where guys go wrong. You cannot generate, let's say the feeling is she wants to feel important or safe or loved or intimacy or joy or passion. You don't get those feelings met by doing things. You get those feelings met by a man who's an expert in understanding unspoken communication, who can identify her needs without having to interrogate her, without her having to tell it to him. Which, by the way, even in a healthy marriage, certainly in an unhealthy marriage, but even in a healthy marriage, a woman doesn't want to have to explain everything. It goes against her nature. She wants you to figure it out. And it's guys here that go, what the hell is this? That's the truth. I'm telling you the truth. If it was an easier way, I will tell you that too. There's no easier way. She wants you to figure her out. And that's where you have to start filling up the bucket. So first we have to stop putting in things that don't matter, because everything you do that doesn't help actually shows you're clueless. Everything you do that doesn't contribute to becoming an expert at her unspoken feelings, what it does is it basically tells you you're desperate. It tells you you're clueless, and that's not attractive, and it's not helpful. So you have to impress and shock her over and over and over again by recreating a feeling she once had for you. Recreating a feeling that she had for you when she fell in love with you, when she was crazy over you. And again, that's the pillar. There are a bunch of different ways to do this, but that is the foundation. You have to know how to impress and shock her. At the same time, here's the fun part. You have to cut back at doing things that don't matter. So why you cut back on 80% of the things that you're usually doing? Because that's also part of shocking her. Where you're cutting back. You're not doing all the stuff that she asks you to do. You're doing a lot less, but you're only doing things that really matter. But at the same time, she's starting to feel, closer to you. She's starting to feel, wow, interesting. I'm feeling more excitement. I'm feeling more confidence in him. I feel like I can open up more to him. I feel like I can be more vulnerable. I feel like I trust him more. Because when you start showing her that you could read her mind, feel her heart, and identify things without her having to say them, that is where the magic starts. Now, I want you to ask yourself a question. You don't have to, you can answer it over here if you feel comfortable. And I hope you do, because the more that you guys open up with each other and the more vulnerability, when one person is vulnerable, it actually allows healing for another marriage too, because someone else feels comfortable. And it is a safe group. So, but if you don't feel comfortable, write it down on paper. But answer this following question. How much of that love, if you have 100% love for her, how much of your love does she feel? Is it 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%? And I know nobody can give an exact answer. There's no blood test that's going to say she feels 43% of your love. There's no such thing. But in your heart, how much of your love does she feel and trust? Now, while the answers come in, so that is a key. if you have to learn how to pick up that number, so let's say she's feeling 25%, Peter says 15. Okay, thanks for your honesty, buddy. So, and I'll check the numbers in a minute, but whatever the number is, you have to know how to bump up that number dramatically. You have to know how to do things that pick up the number, because that's what really matters. Now, here's the thing. The way you win back your marriage is by pressing buttons emotionally, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that starts picking up that number in her heart, that she starts going from a 20 to a 40 to 50, and she starts feeling those feelings she had when she fell in love with you. I'll give you an example of what it means to be an expert in unspoken communication. Another example is to be able to identify her needs without, I said this before, to identify her needs without her telling you. Another thing is, this is a cool one, is to become really good at identifying big problems when they're still small. This is a thing that, quite frankly, men suck. And I struggle with this too for a while. That's how I know it, right? Most men do not see a major marriage problem until it explodes in their face. And when you realize it, to her, it was going on for years. How many guys experienced it? Let's ask the group now. Because again, it's like 25 of you over here. There's 30 guys now. Cool. How many guys over here experienced like you thought things were fine, relatively fine, and then you found out that she was struggling with something in the marriage with you, in the relationship, lack of intimacy, lack of passion, whatever it is. Something was bothering her for a long time before you realized it. All right? How many guys say that? Happens all the time. Let's see. I'll check your answers in a minute. That if you become an expert in identifying a major problem in the marriage while it's still small, then you win a lot of points. That's called filling up your bucket the right way. But again, you got to stop that. You got to plug that leak by doing things that don't matter. You got to plug that leak. In some cases, it might be addiction, whatever it is. I gave you a few examples, and there's hundreds, but you have to plug that leak and then fill it up by showing her you know what the hell is going on without having to interrogate her, without having to ask her questions. Because a woman, even in a healthy marriage, wants you to figure it out. And it is possible. Okay? That is the second pillar. And what I didn't say, what I forgot to say when I started this was these things, let's see any more. Okay, so I'll check the chat in a couple of more minutes. So these things actually impact your business too. Like we started, this group is primarily about marriage, but what we've noticed is that as people improve their marriages, their finances improve too. I just had this today, actually, interesting. I was speaking to a guy, I'm not going to say his name. His wife in the past 24 hours just took out $5,200 from his account to give it to a psychologist because she's depressed. That's just one example of hundreds of examples of how not fixing your marriage has a tremendous financial cost. Now, we've seen this over and over again with people who take their marriage super seriously and they build incredible marriage. They actually end up making a lot more money because they have more confidence, they have more joy, they feel they're not looking behind their back after wife is messaging someone, they are more comfortable taking risk, they have more clarity, more energy, more focus at work. And certainly if they own a business, then the results are off the chart. And the reason why I'm talking about it is because it's the same things that you need. The same pillars that they will, there's our variations, there's little differences, everything's different, right? But the pillars are going to be the same. Stop plugging the leak, stop doing things that don't matter, become an expert in unspoken communication, because as you do that, you pick up your ability to lead your business. You become more magnetic, more attractive to your coworkers, to your boss, or to your employees, depending on what position you're in. And it always translates into a financial benefit too. Now, the focus is you start with a marriage, but those principles are going to be the same. And let's go to the third one. Don't compromise, because we are running a little bit late, but I'm going to try to explain as best as I can. So Marty, what are the things that don't matter? I explained it earlier in this video, okay? There's a bunch of things that don't matter. Like I'll say briefly are doing things, buying things, doing effort, cleaning, cooking, laundry, dishes, trying to be a good dad. All those things don't matter to her. Buying her flowers, working on the love languages, asking her out on a date, spending money without making sure that it actually is going to make a difference. That's a bunch of things. I just said it in a couple of seconds, but we have hours of this in our free training over here in the group. So the third thing is, by the way, let's get to this. And this is the fun one, is don't compromise. Don't keep giving up on your needs. I can't say this enough. And this is the thing which guys think that they're like martyrs or heroes by sacrificing, by giving up on their needs. You don't serve your wife or your kids or your future. You don't serve your marriage by consistently giving up on areas that are important to you. Because, a bunch of reasons. But number one is because that desperation to keep doing whatever she wants, regardless of how it impacts you, it basically, listen carefully, guys, it actually confirms to your wife that you have no ability to read her, because it means you're desperate. And remember, desperation is actually part of the leaking bucket. Doing everything she wants is part of the leaking bucket. But the reason why I made this as a separate pillar is because when you compromise, the damage is very, very severe. It actually robs your motivation. Like, put it this way, the only way to save any marriage, no matter what theory you try to use for saving your marriage, you're going to have to use 100% unconditional love. There's no way out of that. Does that make sense? There's no way out of it. Yes, Tommy, we will send you the replay. Someone on my team will send the replay. And Brian, and whatever was someone who asked for, somebody will reach out to you on our team. Okay, from our team. So if you must use unconditional love. There's no way out of that. It's simple. It's common sense, okay? You cannot have 100% unconditional love if you are frustrated by investing in the marriage. If you're doing something which is undermining your best interests. If you're doing something which is giving up on your needs, it's not going to work. You can try it, but that's why a lot of you are here to begin with, because you keep giving up on everything and you keep just doing whatever she says. And not only it confirms to her that you have no clue how to read her insights and how to become that you're not an expert at unspoken communication. It also ruins your motivation to invest with love, because your needs are not being met. You're choking your own fuel line. Does that make sense, guys? Do you get this? Do you know what I mean? Have you ever experienced this? Do you know what I'm talking about? Share your experience. Feel free in the chat over here. And it's so basic, but it's so overlooked. And a lot of guys feel good. They're overlooking it. Oh, I'm just sacrificing for my family. But then they feel frustrated. They're not being appreciated. Well, the reason is because you're sacrificing in a way that doesn't actually serve you. You're just trying to serve them, and you're confirming to them you have no idea what you're doing, and you're not an expert at unspoken communication, so it's causing her to not respond in the way that you want. And it's also causing her, by the way, how many of you guys had your wife give you a list of things to do, and then you do it and it doesn't work? In other words, she's not happy. It changes 2 months later or 2 days later. Happens all the time. Put it in the chat over here. This happens all the time. Let's be honest. Let's get honest as a group over here. This is what's going on, and this is what nobody talks about. But until you get this right, I'll tell you another problem with few compromise. If you keep on giving in and giving up on your opinions, on your needs, she's going to feel your resentment. So even while you're investing in the marriage and you think you're investing, she actually feels your frustration. And the reason why you don't feel that, why you're not aware of that, is because, again, you're not an expert at unspoken communication. So you think she just looks at what you're doing. No, she's not. She's feeling your resentment. She's feeling your frustration. She's feeling your anxiety, your desperation, or your low self-esteem, whatever it is. And you might make believe it's not there, but it's there. And that actually, it makes it, in her mind, it robs her from feeling your unconditional love. Just give you an example of how these things come together. It's a little bit advanced, but that's what we're recording it, so you can listen to it again if you need to. Okay? And that's part of what makes her not feel your love. And the proof is in the pudding that her needs will keep changing. The list will keep changing. When you have marriage, we call it marriage cancer here. We have videos explaining what that means. But if you watch this, you have a basic idea. When you have a real frustrated marriage, the needs will keep shifting. The list will keep changing. You won't be able to hit the spot that she wants by just doing what she asks. It's just not going to work. And ultimately, when you compromise all the time on your needs, this is the simple one to understand. Eventually, you're going to give up. There's only so much a person can keep giving up. and giving in. It just doesn't work.